All right, welcome everyone to South by Southwest at Block Space, presented by Tezos. We are joined today by Leeston, Bryant, and we have Sebastien from the Sandbox here as well. We are here to talk about the future of the gamer experience, the future of the metaverse experience, and how all that ties together into not only our digitally native worlds, but also how are brands taking advantage of that, and how is culture moving into the metaverse overall. We'll touch on a number of really interesting and important topics. Both our panelists today are working on a number of really cool initiatives that are really leading the pack in their categories. And before we dive into those aspects, I'll actually give both panelists a chance to introduce themselves. And Lisa, I'll let you start.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So my name's Leeston Bryant, manager for esports and gaming at McLaren Racing. That means I look after our esports team. I look after a esports racing tournament that we run, some content creators, and all of our gaming initiatives, really. I think for us, when we think about esports and gaming at McLaren, it's about creating the next generation of fans and also being the number one sort of F1 team in terms of innovation. So yeah, working on lots of different projects across Web3, the metaverse, NFTs, esports, working with publishers, a very exciting role, and excited to talk a little bit more about that today.
Thank you. Sebastien?
Yes, hey everyone, my name is Sebastien Borget. I'm the CEO and co-founder at the Sandbox, as well as the president of the Blockchain Game Alliance. The Sandbox, it's a gaming virtual world where users and creators can truly own and monetize their 3D asset, their experience, their identity through the use of blockchain and NFTs. We are building this open metaverse where anyone can play with these NFTs and involving major brands. More than 200 major brands already are part of our Sandbox, and a lot of user-generated content. Excited to be speaking today here on this panel with you and access those questions.
All right. And Leeston, you actually said something interesting kind of in your intro right there. You mentioned like the future of fandom, and I'm actually going to throw this question to Sebastien. You know, the future of fandom for brands that you have conversations with about how to enter the metaverse, especially in the context of the Sandbox, what do they want to accomplish? Why are they coming to you?
I think, well, definitely Web3 is community driven. It's user centric. So that's a major paradigm shift with what we've seen before in Web 1.0, Web 2.0. The fact that communities can gather around the artists, the creators, the brands, the influencers that they love. They can have direct access to them, to more exclusive, immersive, social, rich, fun, entertaining experiences in various spaces that could be as simple as like chat on Discord room, or more advanced into 3D virtual worlds such as Sandbox is really powerful. And the fact that they can accomplish that through the ownership of digital assets, NFTs, content that they can both use as, I don't know, collectible, art, wearable, avatars, or even game items, having multiple utility that they can transfer to other users, they can sell, they can use across multiple dApps, is really opening a lot of possibilities behind in the form of like expression, in the form of kind of interaction, and what users, fans, and the brands they connect to can achieve. I think that they are less and less, they are not really possible in the physical world for many reasons, because like of the geographical disparity, because like we've been accustomed to thinking in a more transactional manner, actually in Web 2.0 and the commerce web. And and that the metaverse and the NFTs have been really demonstrating already a lot of great value for fans.
Yeah, it's, a lot of times when you have something new, the newness of it overall is what is interesting in kind of the first cycle or first wave of adoption, whether that's a new technology, a new game, a new version of an F1 car. I mean, anything within that realm. And so to just stick with you, Sebastien, on this topic, like, how do you approach the question of providing value in the metaverse, not just in the short term for something that is new, but in long term as well?
The first question I think we should ask is like, what makes an NFT valuable? As the technology behind blockchain has enabled digital asset to be tokenized and essentially enabled three things: the proof of authorship, so who is the creator of an NFT, the proof of ownership, like who currently own it, and the whole history of the past owners, and the digital scarcity. Those three elements have been mostly used to value NFTs until recently, where, and I think it's the most interesting aspect, the utility aspect of the NFTs has been really the one that's now started to drive value. It passed in 2020, 2021, people were really attached just to digital scarcity and the aesthetic and the ownership and the authorship. Today, thanks to having more games, more play to earn, more metaverse, users are able to interact with those NFTs. And that's a lot what Sandbox provides through this creation tool, through the game maker and the game clients, so game mechanics behind that enable users to interact. One clear example is avatars. Like, people are usually entering into NFT through what is called profile picture project, like a collection of 10,000 2D images, sometimes 3D assets that are procedurally generated based on a variation of traits. This is great, they look all good, and we can have a certain value system within the community of holders, but until recently, you couldn't do much of those 2D or 3D character except like displaying them over your Web2 social media profile. With Sandbox, we've worked to implement something called the interoperability bridge, which essentially offer you a new representation for the same token that you own into a wallet, turning 2D profile picture into 3D playable characters that come with 70 animation. They can jump, run, fight, socialize, dance, etc., into a virtual world. So suddenly you have like all the holders from those communities that can enter a virtual space, chat together, dance, do activities, and they can do so much more. They can become creative, they can build extra experience on neighbor lands, etc., developing the whole world, the whole universe around those characters. And hence, that is increasing the utility. The same token has more functions now across different apps, even though the original creator of that collection didn't necessarily think about it. And through that, I believe like it's a great example of like how the Web3 ecosystem is building and how anyone can add a utility to existing tokens and leverage that both as a user acquisition strategy. I want to bring the holders of certain communities and really do that in a win-win situation where everyone grows and accrue value for the people who contribute to building that world, that content, those communities, and engage them.
Yeah, that's actually like a really, really excellent overview of where we sit, of the innovations and kind of the Web3 and NFT space over the last 12 to 16 months. And Leeston, to turn to you and really building off that same question of providing value in kind of these new experiences in these new worlds, McLaren Racing as a brand is legacy. It has provenance. It has gravitas. But when you look back to when McLaren got started as an automotive engineering behemoth, there weren't all these things distracting people from their attention. There was F1. There were one or two other major sports, global franchises and sporting leagues. Now people can go and spend 12, 20 hours a day in the Sandbox or some other metaverse. So why is McLaren now also dipping its toes, not just into a small pool, but really the deep end of esports, of metaverse, of NFTs, and in all of these additional layers?
Yeah, really good question. So I think one of the main reasons why we look to enter into some of these new areas is all about touch points, really. So I'll use the example of our most recent car launch. So 2022, it's a really exciting season in Formula One. It's the biggest year of rule changes that there's been for perhaps a decade, maybe longer. So there's going to be closer racing. So that's really, really exciting. So all of the teams, and if you're an avid Formula One fan, you will have seen they've released their new car over the last couple of weeks. But really, whilst that's a huge moment for the general fan, there isn't a lot to interact with outside of talking about the design or how the team's going to finish this year. So what we did in tandem with our physical launch was launch the car in a environment in Roblox, so people could essentially go look at the car, take a picture with the car, buy some merch. They could take that car and they could drive it in a game straight away. The main line that we used to talk about that was that you could drive the car before the drivers get to drive it, which I think was quite a nice way to tie it all up. So for us, it allowed us to provide some interactivity to an item, which whilst it was a big moment, there normally isn't tons of interactivity. And then two, it allowed us to talk to a whole new fan group. And we often think of in Formula One, the biggest drivers of new fans are probably the Netflix Drive to Survive series. And I'm going to say second, I think everything that's happening in the world of gaming, esports, etc. So that's why McLaren wants to be not just first on the track, but first in those areas of innovation.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's a really good segue to ask you the question of, tell us about your background, the room we see behind you.
Yes. So this is the McLaren Shadow Studio. So this is the home of gaming within McLaren. So this is quite handily right next to my office. But as you come into the McLaren Technology Center and you see the beautiful cars on the boulevard and the bays where they make the F1 car, we have this gaming and content studio here. So our esports team can race, train, and create content here. We've got some PC set up. So we've had, Lando Norris, for example, testing out Roblox from this room, doing a little bit of streaming, etc. So for us, this is a great space to introduce fans when we get them in the building, and also our partners to the world of gaming. And I think it's one of those things where we're often talking to brands about how they can partner with us and enter some of these spaces with us. And I think sometimes explaining it becomes quite difficult, but when you show it, people quite quickly get it. So this space definitely helps us achieve that.
Yeah, and I think we've, just to kind of take a pause for a second, I think we've done a great job really establishing, where you both are coming from on this topic, and would love to just kind of toss a brain teaser out there and ask, is the definition of a gamer the same as it was 5, 10 years ago, or how has it changed? And Leeston, we can start with you on it.
I think for us, we think of gaming as like a really important culture. And I think that the main change hasn't actually been the gamer, it's been the perception of the gamer, I would say. So I would class myself as a gamer, and my other passions are streetwear, food, travel. And I'm exactly the same person that I've always been, but I think I'm just perceived a little bit differently. People are getting that actually you might be a high net worth individual if you're a gamer. You might be interested in history or lots of other different things. So I think it's actually seeing that cross pollination of gaming and esports fans with lots of different areas, which I think a lot of other people have just started to realize, oh, that person actually has a wide sort of range of, experiences and passion. So that's kind of the change that I would say. And then I read a really interesting stat recently, which was in The Guardian, about gaming being the eminent kind of culture. Like, it used to be music for the youth, but now it's gaming.
Yeah, and Sebastien, same question kind of to you, but like, is somebody just walking around the metaverse in the sandbox, are they a gamer?
I think definitely, like, the notion of gamer is definitely shifting since what it used to be about 10 years ago. Like, today there's roughly 2.4 billion gamer overall. I think like the metaverse is this opportunity to bring more than like 5 billion, 7 billion gamer, because it's really broadening the perspective of like gaming is a mechanic, not really a destination. And like, we're moving more into like entertainment, into like all sort of user experience that range from shows, from art galleries, from virtual concerts, from immersive interactive experiences where you get to try a product, where you get to interact with a community, where you get to dance with other users, and you have fun and you come back to that. What Sandbox does, actually, we just opened this yesterday, this alpha season, our second alpha season, bringing back users, and they will get through over a whole month, to experience 35 different kind of content, some made by the community itself, some made with major IPs and brands, including Snoop Dogg, including South China Morning Post, including Blondish as a DJ. And they will interact, they will complete quests, they will do activities, and they will do all of that without even thinking through like, oh, this is a game or this is a concert. It's just like, this is becoming more slice of life that you engage through an avatar, that 3D character that allows you to do tons of different activities in the metaverse, and that you can take across different virtual worlds now, like carrying your identity, carrying your digital asset. And the beauty of it is like, thanks to this interoperability and the fact that we're now decentralized, actually the engagement, the fun goes beyond just the game itself. Like, you can take your wallet and connect it across marketplaces, across different platforms, do DeFi, do staking, do other form of engagement. So it's becoming really almost transmedia, both in the culture and into the usage.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like if we take the idea that the definition of the gamer is expanding, the funnel is getting bigger, wouldn't that also mean that then the amount of experiences that a gamer can experience is also growing as well? Open-ended, whoever wants to jump on it.
It is, and what we used to consider, I think, like, we've seen various trends in gaming. I've been more than 10 years into gaming. I started with mobile free-to-play, but then came like hyper casual, came like HTML5 game, came Oculus and VR experiences, web-based experiences. Now we're seeing play to earn, where users are entering for the first time. Most of them, like, they were not the typical definition of what a gamer is, and now they start playing, they are fun, and both they take some revenue eventually, or rewards for that kind of engagement. That's why, in my opinion, everything can be gamified now, and gaming is going to be the main way to drive retention, to drive engagement, to drive rewards mechanism that makes you want to keep come back into those experiences.
Yeah, Leeston, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's really exciting just seeing that there is just going to be so many different experiences. And to Sebastien's point, even more things in the future that you wouldn't necessarily have traditionally thought of as gaming will be prevalent. So yeah, really excited to see it continue to grow.
So, Leeston, what was the first game you ever played?
The first game I ever played, oh, I'm gonna age myself probably with that question, but I don't mind. I can't think if it was the first game, but the first game I really remember playing was definitely Sonic 2. Yeah, the platformer, the famous character on the Sega, and I think it's obviously incredible to see where gaming as an experience has got to since that time.
Sebastien, do you remember the first game you ever worked on?
Well, so where the first game I played, I got offered like the Super NES, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, depending on the country. So it was probably Super Mario World. It's on 16 bits. Then I played almost every console, etc. And the first game I worked on, actually, this was when we co-founded our mobile free-to-play game studio, and the first title was the Sandbox, actually, on mobile. So Sandbox original story is like it's a game that came to life in 2011 with the idea of using this new technology by then, smartphone and their touchscreen, in order to turn players into creators. Back to this idea, which was very successful back then and drove 40 million downloads, 70 million player-made creation. We always had this idea that we should make new technology accessible, and gaming was a great way to do that. And again, the same with NFTs and blockchain in general.
Yeah, and I think one route that we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on is that everyone really started as kind of that casual gamer, for one reason or another, pass the time, exploration. But today we see the category of professional gaming taking off. And, Leeston, I know with McLaren, like you all even have people competing on the esports side under the McLaren brand. And how is that transformed even your approach to gaming, whether with McLaren overall or just in general? How does professional gaming factor into the changing of the experience?
Yeah, so I think for us, we've got a couple of esports drivers who compete in a series called the F1 Esports Series, representing all the F1 teams, and we are actively looking actually at other series which have the right sort of brand fit for McLaren. But I think the way that it goes now with professional teams and professional organizations, when you add in some of these brands now, the level of competitiveness just goes through the roof, and it becomes about finding, in our case, those milliseconds or tenths, as you call them, and in other games, those minor points that you can change that make the difference in a competition. So in the studio that you see behind me, we take all of the data from our racing drivers. We analyze that the exact same way that the racing team do, and just try to find small performance gains on a consistent basis so that we're competing on a high level. So I think the amount of time, resource, effort that can kind of go into gaming at that level is incredible. And I think that people probably never imagined when they were creating the first games that they would have created an industry like that. So yeah, we definitely approach gaming from a sort of scientific point of view when it comes to competing. And then obviously there's the nutrition and the fitness side of things as well, which can't be discounted when you're competing at that level. So for us, it's that real change of seriousness, and in the competitions that we're in, we see that change year on year and grow. And I think that as the player ecosystem becomes bigger, the viewership becomes bigger, the prize money becomes bigger, teams then take it even more seriously. So, it might look a lot like what some of our major sports in terms of, NFL, soccer looks like in a couple of years' time. And in some games where there is, huge amounts of prize money, it already does look quite a lot like that.
Yeah. The fact that there is let's call it an R&D hub within like a massive R&D hub in terms of a technical center that's churning out state-of-the-art F1 vehicles. Does that impact the development of the game overall?
So I think definitely there are ways to impact the development of the game. So in the F1 series of games that we race in, we actually, which is quite interesting, we had Lando do some driving for us, and he actually gave some feedback around the difference that it is driving a real F1 car versus how it works in games, some things being simpler or more difficult. And F1 did actually look to make that feedback into the games to make them more realistic, which I think is incredible. Having a Formula One driver almost kind of consult on what's happening in a game. We tend to not influence the game outside of that. It's a little bit like I'm thinking of another esports team. You don't want to kind of go to the publisher too much and make the game in your favor. But I think the fact that there are these organizations that are spending, I guess, time and money to kind of exploit any potential benefit does change how that game is then developed in the future.
Yeah, and Sebastien, I almost think that the same question to you is tweaked a little bit, and almost that a lot of the people that want to come to use what you all are building, whether it's brands or other types of activations, or folks like Snoop Dogg or Blondish, et cetera, how does their involvement impact your development?
Well, the story of Sandbox is always all about creator, and that's how again the metaverse NFT based version about 4 years ago started. Like, we first brought in a community of creators, we built the tool for them, a Vox Editor, 3D editor, our game maker, which is no code, and we've been engaging these creators or the artists through various contests, through various competition, to build exciting content, to bring new content that then players could enjoy. The player side just really opened recently at Sandbox. Like, our first alpha season was last December. Our second is just live right now and shows very exciting promises. So it takes time to build games, as you know. It takes time to build a virtual world. That's why I've always had this creator-first approach. We bring brands, and through the brands, we bring their fans as well to engage. But the first thing that the fans do, essentially, when also they follow, is they see the land sale, they become the virtual neighbor into the metaverse from their favorite brands or content. Some of them we brought include The Walking Dead, include Adidas, include Warner Music Group, Ubisoft with the Rabbit, Gucci, Snoop Dogg, which I think is so far one of the leading example of like fan engagement. He launched his mansion into the Sandbox, which will be able to play and enter into with this alpha season. He launched his avatar collection, where there's a 10,000 collection of 3D version. Each one is unique, and it's already playable into a virtual world. So not only you can be the Snoop, but you can play as Snoop anywhere. He also launched the Snoop Early Access Pass, which is like sort of an NFT ticket that give access to various benefits, NFT drop over time, will give access to his first concert onto his land, and so on. So really showcasing a lot of ways that users can and his fan can engage with and do things that they cannot do normally into the real world, because such a few people in life will be able to visit his mansion. Now it's accessible to everyone. We also seen a lot of engagement through user-generated content. Like when we launched the Walking Dead Game Jam, we had several thousand of player-made creation using the Walking Dead NFTs. People were imagining new stories, new episodes from the Robert Kirkman comic book, and really expanding the whole universe. Many of them, they never created games before. So we leveraged new skills, new talents, and made those useful for the purpose of the overall community and the brand itself.
Yeah, and I think actually we should back up a couple steps in for the Sandbox, and really, here at Blockspace presented by Tezos at South by Southwest, one of the installations is actually the ability to scan yourself into a 3D avatar for use in the metaverse. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the Sandbox, they hear all these amazing things happening in it. The first question, if they're not familiar, is, okay, how do I get involved? what's the first step do I take? So how do you answer that? If you're explaining the concept and the engagement and the activity and the experience to somebody who's not a gamer, not familiar with the metaverse, the ideas of it, what is it?
To me, like the entry point to the metaverse, any virtual world, any metaverse, it's the avatar. It's as simple as that. I think anyone can understand that there is this 3D character that you can customize any way you like. It can be man or woman or any gender or any representation. Doesn't need to be actually human. You choose to be that character, and that character then is your entry point to various kind of experiences, which could range from just like cultural, education, art gallery, museum, to pure gaming one, as we've seen in Roblox or Fortnite, etc. That's what anyone should just remember. I should start creating my avatar right now. What I will do next with it, then it's now up to us, the builders, to create.
And you know, Leeston, I almost think that for the McLaren brand, the avatar is actually like the livery, the logo. And how has McLaren almost approached the portability of like the livery of the brand, the logo, into other games, not just in the traditional F1 world?
Yeah, so I guess the if the avatar is the brand, there's our trademark papaya and our blue colors, which really represent McLaren, then also our speed mark, but then also the drivers who are great ambassadors, the most popular F1 drivers on the grid, actually, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. So for example, when we had the Roblox experience, people could purchase the full sort of like driver overall and their face and facial expressions to use as their character. And as well as that, we also sold like merchandise, which was very similar to the teamwear that we sell on our e-commerce site. So you could buy some like a hoodie or a t-shirt that made you feel like you were part of the McLaren team, or as we might call them, the papaya army. So I think those sort of cues help people, create an avatar which feels very McLaren. And then we also have done some sort of mobile gaming executions which are different from, generic just being a race car. And we actually created a sort of car of the future, which is in the Garena Free Fire game. So it uses kind of that engineering, innovation, and then also those brand colors to create items which you wouldn't expect McLaren to create. I was very surprised that we got a McLaren grenade signed off.
That's the future of the gamer experience, I guess. Anything goes.
Anything goes.
Creator first, world first. And as we kind of wrap all the concepts we touched on today together here, I think actually that idea of future is something we should spend a couple seconds on. Sebastien, I think Sandbox has hit over 2 million active users recently. Obviously, the McLaren brand is world famous, and more people every day are joining the esports revolution that you all are playing a big part in. Is the future of kind of the gamer experience all about additional user acquisition, or what is it?
I think it's going first. Oh, after you.
Yes, I think it's definitely the future of user acquisition. And I think I'd like to broaden the perspective. Like we've been talking about esport. Esport to me is like competitive. It's only like the top players who are going to try to rank, and there's like one winner among all those teams or among all those individual players. What we're pushing for is like more like how do we make gaming and entertainment so mainstream that actually playing a game, spending time into an experience, into a metaverse can actually be your new job. Like this is really expanding the definition of like what will people spend their time into, how they will be rewarded for spending their time closer to their favorite brands, being like fun, and or creators. So engaging like as architects, fashion designers, level designers, even community managers, host, like welcoming people into a virtual world actually will be a job in the future. Curator of content, historian of the metaverse, why not? Or just coach, player, guilds, all of that part as well is structuring very well into the Web3 and is helping to onboard hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users who were never gamers before and will not be pro players, but still will enjoy it, spend time, engage, create value, and thanks to Web3, benefit most and first from the value they bring to the network, the community, and the platform.
And if I was to jump in there, I would use a little bit of an analogy that generally when you refer to people who like music, you kind of like, everybody likes music, so you don't necessarily call people like music fans. And I think that 20, 30 years from now, you might not even use the word gamer unless you're talking about someone who is very hardcore, just because everyone is into gaming because it's such a ubiquitous part of life, whether that be on your phone, in a metaverse experience, in a VR experience, and then, you know, at the top of that pyramid, you know, the pro sort of player. But the word gamer might start to disappear. That's when we know we've really hit the critical mass.
The future of the gamer experience is the deletion of the term gamer from the experience.
You can quote me.
I like it. I like it. And actually, just to roll back the tape a couple of seconds, Sebastien, you said something really interesting right there. You know, a lot of it is about fans and creators engaging with brands, but also creators have an opportunity in the metaverse to create their own brand and to create new brands. And that sounds like something that just opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Absolutely. We've already seen that since YouTube, Instagram, Minecraft, Roblox has launched studios. TikTok is the greatest example so far, but those creators, they are so talented. They bring in millions of users. They are now like becoming influencers and brand of their own. Sometimes they help brands from the physical world to better recommend products, sell products, services, and other causes. And yet they earn such a small fraction of the revenue they bring to the platform. I believe it's rather unfair. And what Web3 is aiming to solve is like actually to redistribute more fairly the value that's being created here between the actual creators, the fans of those creators, and the platform itself. Like, platform doesn't capture 70% or more of the value anymore, but it's going to make maybe just the small platform fees, and all the rest goes to the fan. And through that, they will enable them to reinvest into the platform they're earning, etc., developing a circular economy that I hope and I expect in the next 10 years to become a whole digital economy that could become bigger, $1 trillion, multi-trillion dollar digital economy that will become bigger than the actual physical world economy.
That's amazing.
No.
I love what you said about creators there. We haven't really touched upon them much, but I think, you know, that is an area that's just going to rise with creators creating their own brands, with them taking more ownership of companies and really starting to monetize the value that they bring. So I think that's a great point, Sebastien.
And when we kind of hit on the creator note right there and the dissolution, the idea of the gamer, it really actually sounds like it all comes back to the individual, that the individual is more empowered to do more of who they are as an individual, their creative spirit, their individuality, and have that blossom and come to life in a way where before they had to sit into specific little boxes of brands or allegiances or identities. And in kind of the new experiential world that's being built out there, there is no box. There's a sandbox where you can build and play.
Yep. Well, I think I don't have much. Yes, there is a sandbox where you can build and play. That's the quote, I guess. That works for me.
I love it. You know, as we come up on the end of our panel here, I think we've done a great job of really talking about where things have come from, especially given the context of the very different industries that you all operate in, but how there is this kind of connection where the streams are crossing. And what that's going to create in the future is something where we can kind of sketch it out and see what it might become, but there's still so much more that needs to be figured out. And so just kind of as closing statements here, would love to just kind of pose the question of like, what does need to be figured out still? Is it things like identity? Is it things like ownership? You know, does Web3 have a role to play in those things? Anything goes. Leeston, I don't know if you want to try to kick it off. What still needs to be figured out?
What still needs to be figured out? I think it's not necessarily about, for me personally, what needs to be figured out. It's what needs to be explained so that everybody can kind of like get it quite simply. So I think I've talked about Roblox quite recently because that's my personal most recent experience of the metaverse, and we had to explain that platform to a lot of people internally and externally as we went into that. And I think the more that companies like Sebastien's company can make that really tangible and easy for the average person to understand, the more it will just increase growth significantly. I think NFTs are definitely a part of what we're doing at McLaren, and the bit that we're trying to figure out there is just what's the utility moving forward, going back to Sebastien's earlier point. So for me, it's explaining the benefits to people simply and just working out what that utility is across all of these areas.
Sebastien, what do you think?
I fully agree, and I would just add, like, well, if you just explain technology for technology itself, like, it might not really be compelling for most of the mainstream users. Maybe like the tech savvy one would be excited about it, but that's it. So the way to like make it accessible, and that's what it shows, is like really through building the experiences and showcasing the possibility of the technology. So let them come for the fun, for the engagement, for like, wow, the admiration of like those new possibilities. And then as you retain them over time, they might be more curious, and then they might get into like the specific benefit of what the technology enables. That's been mostly what's been driving us for the past 4 years. We didn't launch the NFT and the token, etc. first. We actually launched a creator tool. We launched the thing that show them what they can do. We showed what they can do with great examples, and now progressively more and more of them are interested about the rest of the value proposition.
Couldn't agree more. And I think with that, we'll bring everything to a close. Leeston from McLaren, Sebastien from the Sandbox, everyone watching virtually and everyone in person in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest, thank you very much for tuning into this panel at Block Space presented by Tezos. It's been a really, really insightful couple minutes here of diving into the future of the gamer experience. And there's a lot of things in store for this category. And as we have just touched on, there's only more things to build. And if the biggest takeaway from today is there's an endless amount of things to build. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and see you in the metaverse.